Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about networking to get your next job and how if you set yourself up correctly, buying a beer could lead to you getting your next role. So there are three main concepts I'm going to be breaking down today, which is maximizing your luck through networking, refining your digital presence, and going to events. And the short answer is that you shouldn't be submitting your resume through online portals, but instead through networking, you have a much higher chance to actually landing your next job and getting yourself in front of the people who make those decisions. So, bit of context, last year, left my job in training, and whilst I was in my 6-week trip in Scandinavia, tried to apply for one of the big banks, for change management and almost landed a role, but at the end, right before I was going to secure the final round interview, got beaten to, the finishing line by an internal applicant who had already worked at the bank. So what that really told me, it really reinforced the notion that if your foot's in the door already, it's much easier to secure a role that opens. And the talent acquisition lead who, was the bearer of bad news, who told me about this internal applicant, I asked some follow-on questions about how many change roles typically open, at a large organization such as a bank. And he mentioned that it was, quite a few, like there weren't many in a year. And if there were some openings that, they usually weren't timed, it was as a result of someone going on maternity leave, or there was a short-term demand for someone to step in for a project, and usually they'll be open to internal applications first. So reinforce the notion that you need your foot in the door, or you need a personal connection if you're really going to have a higher chance at landing a role. So that leads me to the first book that I'm going to be mentioning, which is The Luck Factor. So one of my good mates, Mark, mentioned this book to me a while ago, and he actually mentioned that I was practicing a lot of these principles already without knowing it. Basically, the luck factor is about having a really positive mindset and believing that by putting yourself out there, you're maximizing your exposure to a lot of other people as well that you normally wouldn't be exposing yourself to. Let's say you're having a not so good day where you don't feel like talking to people, you just want to do your own thing, and you might go to some stores and it might be really transactional. You just be like asking for some things, you pay them, and then you get it, and that's it. Whereas if you have a much more positive mindset and you're, willing to, spark conversation, and you just seem like a more approachable person in general, like at that very first impression when you're at a store and you're like, oh, how are you? The person all of a sudden is, on the receiving end, probably much more open as well to engaging with you, as opposed to if you're not really feeling good and not really bothered to putting yourself out there. So a quick anecdote of my personal experience when I came back from Scandinavia was how I started to maximize my luck through networking. So I made a hit list of basically all my connections and sort of segmented them into a couple of buckets, which were people from my professional experience. So people who I've worked with before, or people who I've already networked with in some sort of setting, whether it's doing, like a class or going to a networking event, such as like a hackathon or like a startup pitch event or something like that. And I identified, okay, of these contacts, who do I actually know the best, and which people would actually be willing to vouch for me personally if I asked them to help me out. So the pitch was basically, I've taken the leap from training and I want to get into change management. Do you know of any projects or people who you'd be happy to refer me to? It's pretty much along those lines, and it was quite specific, asking them to refer me. And that list had to be sort of double checked, because you don't want to be sending that out to someone who doesn't really know you or is an acquaintance, just because it might be a bit too much to ask for. So that was my first sort of column, and in terms of effort and impact, that list was probably the highest impact and most potential, but actually didn't eventuate too much. There were a couple of openings in the training space, just because I invested a lot into, being a training and development, professional, and I really enjoyed it. But I wanted, I committed myself to going into change. So training was sort of a fallback, and I didn't really want to go back into training. So the next column of maximize my luck and networking was through my personal relationships. So these might be family members or family friends who also work in similar or related industries. So I had quite a few close friends who used to work in consulting, but now are running their own shop in a variety of industries. And I hit them up as well, just because they are quite high impact sort of connections, just because they have connections in consulting still. And yeah, I had a couple of, potential leads there, which could have eventuated to something. But just to get to the core of the story, the key connection was actually through my girlfriend, who knew a change manager. And this change manager referred me to two recruiters who I got in touch with. So the funny story about this is that there was a third column, which was sort of cold calling and reaching out to recruiters from key recruiting firms who specialized in change management. So in terms of effort impact, again, I really thought about, okay, in terms of recruiters, how can I get the best bang for my buck? And obviously recruiters in change management was the best way. So I reached out to some of these, and the funny story is, with these two key recruiters that I reached out to, one of them was the manager of one of the other recruiters that I reached out to. And this recruiter, who's in this third column, didn't actually give me the light of day when I pitched myself and explained why I wanted to get into change management. Pretty sure she scene zoned me on LinkedIn, and I was like, okay, it's a bit of rejection, but it sort of comes with this process that you're going through in terms of reaching out to people. So I reached out to these recruiters, recruiter A and B, and recruiter B eventually gave me an audience and we met up. And the funny thing was, this recruiter who scene zoned me actually coordinated and organized like recruiter B and her meeting up with me as well. So if that says anything, it just reinforces that if you have your foot in the door and you have a connection, it's just so much easier to get an audience with the right people. Like she thought I was some nobody until I caught the eye of the manager, and then that's when I met with them. But a couple of opportunities came up with them, but actually that fizzed out as well. So I meet with recruiter A, and here's where I'm going to be touching on the second book, which was very crucial to me, having a very strong framework to approach this uncertainty of being fully unemployed, having no prospects, and just knowing my goal and just going for it. So I think there's one thing that is a prerequisite, which is if you're taking a career leap, you need to make sure that you've done, I guess, your fundamental preparation, which is, do you have the right amount of experience to be pitching yourself to get this future job? So silly example is, if I was in training and development and I left my job and I wanted to become a patisserie chef, the question is, have I done baking in my spare time? Do I have a YouTube channel where I'm, baking goodies? Do I have any experience? Am I able to speak the language of bakers? And if not, then I'm missing that core fundamental piece, which is having, those core technical skills to at least be pitching myself. So first of all, get your bread and butter right, and then you can be in this position to be networking to try and get your next job. So recruiter A sets me up with a meeting because I've really set myself up well. And the book that allowed me to do that was What Color is Your Parachute? So What Color is Your Parachute shares a few main concepts, but one of the key ones is that digital marketing and Google has really allowed the individual to empower themselves to put their best foot forward. So obviously there's search visibility, and if someone Googles your name, what comes up? So the first tip that they actually share is that you should clean up your online presence. So there's photos of you partying, end of high school or university, maybe you're passed out or something, and your friends thought it was funny to upload it. Ask your friends to take that photo down and just clean up what's visible on your Facebook network. Twitter, Instagram, and whatnot. And make sure that if a prospective employer can see it, that it's clean. But second of all, the proactive approach for digital is that if you enjoy something, their recommendation and my recommendation is to write a blog about it or create a YouTube channel, create some sort of online presence where you can really showcase your passion for a certain topic and to showcase your experience as well. The book, What Color is Your Parachute, really questions the status quo of submitting your resume. And I really agree with that as well, because a talent acquisition lead of an organization will receive hundreds, if not thousands, of similar looking resumes, including yours. And it's just a really low percentage game. So as a result, maximizing your digital presence is key. So that was one of the things that really allowed me to separate myself from the pack when engaging with Recruiter A. And that's what really gave her the confidence to put me in front of, some important figures. So she actually set me up with a head of change management of a really large financial organization in Australia. And I sort of blew it because I put too much pressure on myself. It was a couple of weeks after coming back from Scandinavia to Australia. I drank an entire Red Bull right before the meeting. So I'd be like at peak sort of mental performance, but I was too jittery all over the place and blew it. So even though I did somewhat well, I didn't end up getting a job. And I was quite disheartened for maybe a day or two. But then I realized that I was actually starting to get really close because I had the ability, my hard work and this calculated approach had granted me an audience with such an important figure. So then that led me to the thought of, okay, how can I maximize my chances of meeting more of these people in the right setting? And this is where events comes in. And What Color is Your Parachute really talks about putting yourself in the right setting where you can create a two-way conversation for getting employed. So What Color is Your Parachute talks about, finding employment as sort of like a dating process. Not only do you want to join a great firm, but a great firm wants to find a great candidate, a star candidate like yourself. And a lot of that process is knowing yourself very well and just being able to explain why you're different to everyone else who's applying. So it's 2 weeks after I met with this head of change of a large organization and not got the job. So looking forward to networking events. I realized there's a networking drinks from one of the key change management bodies in New South Wales. So they're just an organization who bring together a lot of change management professionals. And it's pretty much a networking drinks where people can collaborate and just meet each other. So I realized that this was sort of the hot spot for any change practitioner or people who might be in the same boat as me as well, people who come from different industry and are wanting to find out more about change management and perhaps take the leap. So I think there's a couple of key mental hurdles when people want to go networking or to go to an event, especially if you don't know anyone, or you feel like you might have imposter syndrome because you're not as experienced or you're not a professional in this particular field. And I think one of the switches that helps me really overcome this mental hurdle is acknowledging that everyone starts their journey somewhere. So even these, big execs of change management or whatever line of work you're trying to get into, at the end of the day, they're still a human. They still need to wipe their bum just like everyone else. And similarly, they also started their journey in this industry, not today, but a long time ago. So, that's how you can sort of level the playing field and just humanize the process and the people of networking. So this drinks is on 2 weeks later. I catch the bus going into the city and I'm nearing the venue, feeling pretty calm and relaxed. Especially having done, solo travel for 6 weeks, I was really comfortable being in unfamiliar situations, just being by myself and winging it and seeing what would materialize if I put myself out there. So I get up to the bar and everything's all good until I step into the building. The moment I step into the building, I start breathing really heavily and I'm packing it. And I'm breathing so hard that my glasses that I'm wearing actually fog up. So I take my glasses off and I sort of wipe them on my jacket, put them in my jacket pocket. And as I'm walking up to this event, there are all these groups of people who are already engaged. I arrive a little bit late, sort of on purpose. And there were some dinosaurs, like some old practitioners, professionals sitting in some corner as well, which was even more intimidating. And I walk straight to the bar. I pretty much just drift, away from the event to the bar. And I'm so nervous that I don't even really know what I want to drink. And, the bartender's like, "Oh, hey, how are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, pretty nervous actually. I'm at a networking event by myself." She's like, "Cool, what would you like to drink?" And I just point to one of the beers on tap. It's a Heineken, and I sort of slam half of it down straight away just to calm my nerves. And I think this is a key lesson, especially why networking events are quite beneficial. Not that you need to drink alcohol to relax, but I think just the environment and being able to just have, even like a lemon lime bitters or, some sort of carbonated drink that you enjoy allows you to just be in a more relaxed state than a one-on-one setting, such as the example I used when I was meeting with the head of change. So having this beer allowed me to just cool my nerves and be more myself and not feel the need to sell myself so hard. So I picked a circle that was right next to the bar, introduced myself like, "Hi, I'm Jono. Do you mind if I join you guys?" And, everyone was nice about it. And as I chatted, I met a girl who was in the same boat as me. She also was in the training field, and she was looking to jump into change. And she was sussing out change management from that point of view. So we're able to collaborate on that, and I was able to share my story. She was able to share her story as well. And that started to really allow me to snowball my confidence in this networking event, because I realized that, everyone was being quite nice and there were other people in the same boat as me. So the key interaction that I had from this networking drinks was actually meeting a guy. So as I, jumped from circle to circle, eventually people just moved on and started talking to other people, and I found myself by myself. So, just sort of stood comfortably and sort of suss out the room and picked, where I wanted to go next. But lo and behold, this guy actually approaches me. And, I saw him a bit early in the night with some of the older sort of dinosaurs of change. And I thought he was a recruiter just by how he was holding himself. He was very confident. And pretty much he started interrogating me on, why I was at the event in a nice way. But it was, "Oh, what are you sort of doing here?" And from here, it led to him questioning me about, my projects. He knew about the startup that I had actually worked at before. So there was some rapport building already from step one. But he started interrogating me about my projects and what my responsibilities were, and the results that I produced. And it was good because, What Color Is Your Parachute, the book, really emphasizes on knowing your stuff in the industry that you want to go into. So you really need to know, the terminology, the knowledge, the concepts, and also understand that, how your work experience translates over to this particular industry. And I had prepared all of these things very well, beforehand during my trip in Scandinavia, but also when I was in Sydney, and maximizing my luck opportunities through networking and also refining my digital presence. I had written all my projects down word for word in a Google Doc, and then pretty much wrote questions that potential recruiters or managers or other people might be quizzing me on. So I had a response for most of the main questions which I could think about. So I presented these things well and clearly, and he was impressed, and I knew my purpose very well on why I wanted to go into this industry. That's definitely going to be a video that I'll be sharing in the next couple of weeks, how to find your purpose and how to find the right industry as well, and how to marry those two principles together into a compelling narrative. So I shared my compelling narrative, and from here, he was, so impressed that, he invited me to shoot an email to him, and from there potentially go through the interviewing process. And the rest is history. From here, I joined the consulting firm that he was working at. It's a boutique change management consultancy, and so that's my story of a couple of the key interactions, like maximizing my luck, but also having a calculated approach to networking in the market. And these principles really allowed me to sort of have the fast track to getting myself out there to the most important people, instead of just submitting my resume into the void of thousands of other resumes and professionals competing for the same job. So I was quite looking forward to making this video, just because of the state of the world right now with the pandemic, COVID-19, and the effect that it's had on the economy and just so many people's jobs, either displacing their jobs or really disrupting the industry. And, a lot of us have a lot of time on our hands to think and really question our purpose, question whether we're in the right line of work, whether it's rewarding, and perhaps, where we're supposed to be. So I hope this video helps you if you're looking to make a career shift now or in the near future. If you like the books and the frameworks that I was touching on as well, the links are below in the description. If you hit those links, just to be upfront, I will be receiving a commission from Amazon. But hopefully those books, sound good to you if you're trying to have a calculated approach to maximizing your opportunities to put yourself in front of the right people. If you want to find out more about how to discover your purpose and how to find the right career, I'll be touching on those soon. So please subscribe, like the video, and if there's anything else or questions about this video, please drop a comment below, and I'll catch you in the next one.